Namaskar. You know, today they say in job market, the biggest demand are for recovery agents. Banks are looking for recovery agents. You know why they want recovery agents? They want recovery agents so that they can call borrowers. They can call borrowers who have not been paying them money, who have not been paying them EMIs, and get their monies from those borrowers. So recovery agents are in demand. Huge amount of people, huge amount of borrowers who had borrowed when they were getting their full salaries, borrowers who borrowed when the market was good. These borrowers who are now not able to pay back, a huge amount of these people are being now called, being threatened at times, being abused, so on and so forth. We ourselves, we get a lot of calls from these borrowers because we have done a couple of shows on these threatening calls and so on and so forth. So at one end, a common man is being threatened for what he borrowed from the bank, is being abused so that the money is recovered by the bank. And at another level, there was a interim order passed by the Supreme Court of India on the 2nd of September 2020, that is last year, where they said that till 31st of August, from 31st of August 2020, no borrower should be termed as NPAs. They said you put a hold till our next order. So from 2020, 31st of August till date, NPAs went on piling up. NPAs went on piling up to an extent of 1.4 lakh crores. And the banks do not know what to do with them because they cannot show it as NPAs because the High Court said so. The Supreme Court said so. Now, the Supreme Court on 23rd of March 2021, that is day before yesterday, Supreme Court passed a judgment saying that, listen, you know what, now no more moratorium. Supreme Court passed a judgment saying that, listen, while you don't have to pay compound interest, you have to pay interest, and you don't have to pay compound interest and penal interest. My question tonight to Akhilesh is, Akhilesh, at one end, a common man is forced to pay money, is forced to pay his EMIs, he's getting threatening calls, and at another end you have these large corporates who may not even want a moratorium and things, have piled up NPAs to the tune of 1.4 lakh crores and now will not be paying compound interest nor penal interest, I think to another tune of 14 to 15,000 crores. Finally the bank suffers. If the bank suffers, again a common man suffers. So ye kaisa rule hai that the common man is suffering and big corporates have no problem. Number one. Number two, Akhilesh, part two of the same question, why is Supreme Court interfering in banking?
So, Sujit, I'll take your question point wise. The first is you mentioned about the small borrowers facing recovery agents. Yes, the fact of life is that the small borrower who may have taken a vehicle loan or who has got a loan of up to 2 to 5 crore rupees, or a education loan borrower or a credit card dues defaulter, it is they who get calls from the recovery agents, extremely insulting, extremely threatening, extremely intimidating, and very aggressive and rough. The big borrower who has borrowed large sums of money, they are beyond the calls or action of recovery agents, that's for sure. The banks don't send recovery agents to them, they take them to court, and that is what the big borrower prefers because that's where the game lies. Looking at India's judiciary being so slow and uncertain. So yes, you are right in that sense that there is an unequal situation as far as recovery through recovery agent mechanism is concerned, and also in respect of recovery per se, because we hear of the big borrowers getting huge haircuts when loans are settled. But when it comes to the small borrowers, we really don't hear of that. So that reality of a lopsided recovery situation does exist. Coming to what you talked about the Supreme Court judgment and the interim order. The facts of the case are something like this, Sujit. Last year in March, the government of India announced a lockdown. The lockdown meant that the economy had come to a standstill. Cash flows of businesses, incomes of businesses had come to a standstill. And that meant, how do they service loans? How do they repay loans? So the Reserve Bank came up with a regulation saying that the borrowers are going to be given a moratorium period of 3 months, which is from March to 31st of May, which they then extended it to 31st of August. So there was a 6 month moratorium period which was not extended. The borrowers then said, well, you have given us a moratorium. How do we pay interest? You need to wipe out or write off the interest also, give us some kind of a relief there. The government of India said, the Reserve Bank said in particular, that we can't give you an interest write off because if we ask the banks to not charge you interest for 6 months, that means a loss of 6 lakh crores of income for banks. Their entire capital might be wiped out. That, of course, was the right response. So, well, the borrower said, well, if my loan is not due for repayment in these 6 months because of a moratorium, you can't charge me any penal or compound interest. The Reserve Bank of India, they said, well, that makes sense. So the government of India intervened and said that as far as the small borrowers are concerned, which is the MSME sector, which is education loans, consumer durable loans, vehicle loans, housing loans, credit card dues, for them, the government said that anybody who has an exposure below 2 crores, we will ensure that you do not pay compound and penal interest because by virtue of the moratorium, your loan is not due and we will pay it. That amount was 6,500 crores that the banks forewent, and it is the government which was to pay to the banks. We hope it has done that. Well, the big borrowers thought that they had been shortchanged. But the fact is, they saw an opportunity. So they ran to the court and said, why are we being charged interest? Why should there not be an extension of the moratorium period? Why should there not be an extension of the restructuring period? And why should specific sectors like real estate, etc., which are so badly hit, not be given some specific relief? So the big borrowers, because it is they who pull the levers of the system so easily, they ran to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court in its interim order said that you cannot recognize NPAs beyond 31st August till we give final orders. In other words, NPAs were frozen as of 31st of August. They, of course, said wait for the final order as far as your other plea of moratorium, restructuring, etc. is concerned. So the net result, Sujit, was banking came to a huge mess. They could not recognize NPAs. They could not recognize the losses on account of NPAs, which you rightly mentioned have ballooned to another additional NPAs in the system of 1.4 lakh crores. They did not know whether they are going to be charging interest or not because the Supreme Court said, we will let you know. They also did not know whether restructuring is going to be extended. So there was, according to me, chaos in the banking system. Day before yesterday, the Supreme Court has come up with its final order. And the final order says that, okay, everybody will be given across the board relief from the interest on account of compounding interest and on account of penal interest. That is a relief, Sujit, which is directly meant for the big borrowers. And that's a relief to the tune of 15,000 crores. Banks are going to forego that kind of income again. The Supreme Court, of course, then said you can't extend the moratorium period any further. And the Supreme Court also said that as far as restructuring is concerned, it remains where it is. Pertinently, the Supreme Court made a remark, Sujit, that economic decisions are best left to the government and should not be handled by courts. I do not know if that was the spirit of the entire litigation. Then why was that interim order passed on 2nd of September itself? Because that was a direct interference in the functioning of banks by courts, with due respect to the Supreme Court.
What an irony, isn't it? 14,000
Yes.
rupees, and you require, and you will get a abuse call. You will get a call where somebody abuses you. 14,000 rupees if you,
Yes.
you owe the bank. But 1.4 lakh crores, it's okay. Matlab, you can go to court, fight it in court, and then, after maybe 50 years, you can decide to pay and how to pay and where to pay and if at all to pay.
So, Sujit, coming
Sorry.
to the point you raised about the unequal, unfair treatment that the small borrowers get, let me point out further, Sujit. The government last year also imposed a suspension of the insolvency and bankruptcy code. In other words, even if a big borrower had gone bankrupt, because the IBC is not really meant for the small borrowers, even if a big borrower has gone bankrupt or it is defaulting on the loans or it is not repaying the loans, the IBC could not be invoked. In other words, the bankers could not take the defaulters to the NCLT for recovery. That also was a huge favorable treatment given to them. They suspended the IBC till 24th of March. So for 1 full year, bankers could not take the defaulting borrowers to the courts and enforce recovery. I think that also was a huge relief, because while that was the relief given to the big borrowers, in the meanwhile, as far as small borrowers were concerned, calls of recovery agents were certainly going, Sujit.
Akhilesh, now tell me, this 1.4 lakh crores of NPA that is piled up. What will happen next quarter? This entire 1.4 crores will come up on our face.
Oh, yes. So what is now going to happen is bankers will have to recognize these NPAs which they had not recognized. Some of the banks were issuing what was called pro forma financial statements, where they were giving some kind of an indication of the NPAs that are building up after 31st of August. It was just an estimate, because you will appreciate the fact that the Supreme Court had said you cannot recognize an NPA. So the banking software was not recognizing. We do not know during this interim period what was the actual figure. Even this 1.4 lakh crores, Sujit, is an estimate. Now we will come to know what was the actual amount of NPAs that remain unrecognized in the system, or rather remain hidden. And bank balance sheets are going to take a hit, according to me.
Why is it always that rules are rigid for small borrowers, middle class people, individual borrowers, and rules are bent, broken, mended, changed, everything for large borrowers?
Sujit, our system is lopsided in favor of the big borrower for various reasons. One is the big borrowers very often are cronies of the system. By virtue of their resources, their networking, they have access to all the top people. So obviously, when they have such access to all the top guns, they ensure that regulations favor them. The second, of course, is that because they have got more resources, they've got more lobbying power, which the middle class sector does not have. Resultantly, whenever it comes to regulations in the banking system, all the tough and rough measures are directed to the small borrowers, to the middle class, as you rightly pointed out. But when it comes to the big ones, it may look very tough on paper for the sake of optics, but in reality, they never do get enforced. And that explains why we have over 10 lakh crores of NPA and we don't know what to do with them.
This 1.4 lakh crores of NPAs, how does this affect a common man? How does it affect me?
Sujit, whenever there are NPAs in the system and they do not get recovered, it means that much of money has gone out of the system. So the first thing is that money which should have gone to worthy borrowers has gone to the unworthy borrowers. And resultantly, the worthy borrowers are denied the opportunities of borrowing and using it fruitfully, profitably. The second thing that happens, that we have always seen from experiences, that whenever NPAs balloon in the system, the rules and regulations for lending or the attitude of bankers becomes so stringent and tight that the first ones who get impacted and excluded from any further opportunities to borrow are always the small borrowers. The banks do continue to do business in some way or the other with the big ones. So as soon as you have an onslaught of huge number of NPAs in the system on banks, it is the small ones suffer, because, as I again said, they have no lobbying power, and all the stringent regulations are probably taken on them, taking them as guinea pigs of the system.
Tell me, Akhilesh, if I make this statement, will I be right or wrong? Most of the NPAs that happens in our country, most of the NPAs, there are some system errors, either done deliberately or, for whatever reason.
You know, Sudhit, experience says that when there is a huge buildup of NPAs in the system, it is very often because of the bankers being collusive and corrupt. Loans were given for the sake of kickbacks and bribes. That's the first. Or the second is that the banker has been incompetent and negligent, resulting in bad decisions to lend. Or the third, of course, is maybe the banker did not take money directly, but he kowtowed, he went by the meddling that got done in his functioning by some senior Babu or senior Neta, and he looked the other side, as we have seen loans given to the likes of Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi. There were telephone calls induced banking loans that took place. So you are right when you say that something was violated. Some rules were broken. Bankers did not do their due diligence and appraisal, and their sense of skepticism, as we call it, was let down in a big way, such that those who were not worthy borrowers were given loans. So yes, somewhere or the other, whether intentionally or unintentionally, whether deliberately or out of a sense of negligence and incompetence, rules, regulations, banking procedures to check the background and the due diligence of the borrower was compromised in a significant way. And that's why we have these huge amount of NPAs in the system. The system doesn't know what to do with it.
When I go to a bank and I have to start an account, there is something called as KYC, know your customer. Okay, they ask me for my Aadhaar card, my PAN card, my that card, my this card, 10 photographs, all of that happens. I fill a lot of forms and I give it to the bank. Okay, and it is necessary that the bank should know who I am and where I am getting my money from. Fair enough. But why doesn't the RBI let me know what my bank is, who my bank is? Why don't I have a KYB, know your bank? The RBI should give me some kind of information about the bank I am investing in. Who are the directors? Who are the people? Are any Vadwans involved or are any Malias involved? I need to know who the bank is giving money to. What are the criteria in which the bank gives money? Shouldn't I be also informed what my bank is and who my bank is and how my bank is operating? Don't I have the right, Akhilesh?
You know, it's like this, Sujit. The Reserve Bank of India does conduct an inspection. It's like an audit of banks every year. It is the RBI which goes into the detailed functioning of the banks and sees whether rules, regulations were followed or not, or whether there was compromise of any sort. The point here is that in some way or the other, extracts of those reports should be made public. So if the Reserve Bank of India conducted inspection of Yes Bank, for example, and year after year they found that under Rana Kapoor, Yes Bank was indulging in major violation of compliances and regulations. They call it regulatory compliances being diluted in a big way. That means something was seriously wrong. They should have some mechanism where it is put on the website of the bank as well as the Reserve Bank of India, because by that very inspection that was conducted by the Reserve Bank and those extracts being made public, we will all come to know what is the health of the bank, how is it being managed, are there mismanagement, what are the losses that could emerge, and whether your deposits are safe or not. The Reserve Bank refuses to do that, citing reasons of confidentiality. But according to me, more than the Reserve Bank of India, it is the banks who don't want these inspection reports made and put in public, because of course they would get exposed. So while what you're saying, I would really agree, there should be a KYB. And the best way of a KYB is not to get a detailed rating exercise done on the bank, but just to make the Reserve Bank report made public as far as adverse remarks are concerned. I think that's an enough warning for us, Sujit.
Technically speaking, the Reserve Bank works for the banks or Reserve Bank works for the citizens of this country? Who does the Reserve Bank actually work for? An honest question.
Say, Sujit, Reserve Bank is the regulator. It means it is required to protect the interests of the depositor and the borrower. Because by giving a banking license, the Reserve Bank is permitting a particular entity to now handle your life savings. And so the regulator's role is primarily directed for the benefit of the public, whether in the form of a depositor or in the form of a borrower. Here, as you rightly mentioned, borrowers, the small borrowers in particular. So the Reserve Bank, according to me, should be more bothered about the safety, the entire process of banking to be in favor of the small borrower, the small depositor.
So you're technically saying Reserve Bank works for me, right? Yes, Akhilesh.
Yes, Sujit.
If that is the case, then Akhilesh, if there is a flaw, there is a fault with Punjab and Maharashtra Bank, when there are issues in Yes Bank, okay, and when the bank finally closes down, when the depositors loses money, how come Reserve Bank plays? I mean, Reserve Bank is never blamed at all. Finally, isn't it their responsibility to audit this bank? Isn't it their responsibility to ensure that these banks are in good health? Isn't it their responsibility that these banks do not conduct fraud? There is no fraudulent manipulation. I understand that the people who conduct fraud should be put behind bars, but shouldn't Reserve Bank be also questioned?
I agree with you completely, Sujit. If you take the case of Punjab Maharashtra, which is the PMC Bank, it is very clear that from 2016, 17, 18 onwards, 19, of course, the RBI knew things are not right. The RBI did not go down to the bottom of it. You know, when they talk about auditors, they say that if you suspect something, you must go to the bottom of it and find out. That applies to anybody who's doing an audit or inspection. The Reserve Bank is certainly to blame when these kind of monumental collapses and failures of banks take place, because they don't take place overnight. They have been festering for years. The Reserve Bank has been incompetent, or somebody there has not looked into the matter correctly, he has been collusive. The sad part is that while we hear of agencies like CBI, ED, etc., investigating the borrowers, the management of banks, etc., we have never heard of this kind of an action being taken against the Reserve Bank officials who were in charge of supervision of the bank concern. I
Correct.
think there's a huge lacuna there.
So if you actually look at our financial system, we have a lot of people who've got a lot of authority. The finance ministry has a lot of authority. The Supreme Court has a lot of authority. The Reserve Bank has a hell of a lot of authority. But nobody has a responsibility. No responsibility for anybody. If something goes wrong, if the NPAs go up, Supreme Court said after 31st of August, do not record NPAs till we give you further orders. Okay, NPA went up to 1.4 lakhs. How is Supreme Court responsible? Supreme Court is not responsible. But they had the authority to put that order. Same is the case with the Reserve Bank. They have authority to kind of go and audit, go and put rules, go and put regulations on, go and put moratorium and all of that they go and do. But do they have any responsibility? No, they have absolutely no responsibility. Authority galore. Same is the case with the finance ministry. Akhilesh, isn't it time that somebody puts a stop to this?
Sudhir, you spoke about who has a responsibility. Well, small borrower has a responsibility to repay. Don't you understand?
Correct.
As far as the regulators and authorities are concerned, and the big borrowers are concerned, well, the law on paper is supposed to be made for all, but it doesn't get implemented for all. The point here is that the authority concerned who was in charge of supervision, or the babus in the ministry concerned who are in charge of supervising what kind of regulations are being made and implemented in banks, they had a bigger responsibility. And the way the system is geared up, no questions get asked here. If they fail, if they have been, collusive in their own way, if they have been incompetent, there is no question which is ever posed to them. And I think that needs to be done. I must tell you, recently we saw in the case of SEBI that the CBI has come and interrogated some of the senior most officers. And those senior officers were at one point of time posted in Kolkata, and they were found to be collusive or negligent in the Sarda scam that took place in West Bengal. Now, I mean, it's no coincidence that this action is being timed with the Bengal elections. But I really wish that this becomes a practice. I wish this becomes a practice where every regulator is concerned, whether for the capital markets, which is SEBI, or for banking markets, banking industry, which is the Reserve Bank, or for the insurance market, which is IRDA, etc. I think they need to be questioned. They have a huge responsibility. When banks like PMC and Yes Bank, etc., fail, I think somewhere they held the main responsibility because, as you said, we do not know the health of the banks. They were aware of it and they were expected to take action, which they did not.
Akhilesh, tell me, what is the future of banking in India?
Sujit, the future of banking in India, let's look at it from two sides of their business. As far as getting deposits is concerned, it is good for the simple reason that we are a nation that saves. Our incomes may not be too much, but we save. We save a large proportion of our incomes. In the lockdown time, when we thought that people are now going to be depleting their savings big time, the Indian man actually has saved extra in the lockdown. So we save. So as far as flow of resources to the banking system is concerned, in future, it will always remain robust. We like to deposit our money with banks. The point is about lending. And that is where a large failure takes place. As far as lending is concerned, at the moment, we have a huge mountain of NPAs, and that is taken as a legacy that the Modi government got. It's another thing that they have done nothing about it in the last 6 years. But the issue here is that the entire system has not yet been repaired or cured as far as giving bad loans is concerned. All that has happened is a knee-jerk reaction and banks have stopped lending. But believe me, as soon as things come back to normal, you will have all the touts operating in the system. You will have all the Neta and Babu meddling in the banks, and you will have all the bankers very willingly giving bad loans to all the cronies of the system because each one is benefiting in the process. So the future is good as far as deposit taking is concerned. As far as loan giving is concerned, well, let this entire mountain of NPAs get sorted out at some point of time. There'll be a lull for some time, Sujit, and then bad loans will come back. This is what the experience says of India's banking history so far.
So with that very, very encouraging remark, Akhilesh, Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Sajid.
Thanks.